Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Going to Bat with Team Irie. This is episode number 47. We raise money for spinal cord injury research and high school scholarships here in Kentucky. So, if you want to see some of the interviews I have already did this year, you can look back through our foundation page and see those, or stay tuned to see some of the new ones we have coming out here pretty soon. Today, I'm honored to be with Ed Ott, the 1979 World Series champ with the Pittsburgh Pirates. How you doing today, Ed?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
Hey, I really appreciate you coming on, being a part of this. You're one of the guys I was after to do these interviews, and when you agreed to it, I was really happy. So I appreciate that.
I love it. I love talking baseball.
Oh yeah, and so do I. So we'll get started on some of the questions here. I read up a little bit about your history and some of the things you've done, and you were raised and you grew up in Pennsylvania. There, you were drafted out of Muncie High School in Pennsylvania. But what I thought was unique was that your high school didn't even have a baseball team. So you were drafted by the Pirates. How did that happen?
Well, my dad was an area scout for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he would take me to tryout camps. And I was actually playing in a league of older gentlemen. And when I was 13, 14 years old, I was playing against 35-year-old guys. And then I was gone, got into American Legion with my dad, and that's where I got scouted from, the American Legion program. And we
That
only
was
played
pretty.
10 games a year.
That was pretty good. So playing the older guys really helped.
Definitely.
Yep. And I know I was reading up on your school there. You mostly done, at this school they mostly had wrestling, football, and basketball. And what I read, you were an all around athlete. I even read in one game that you scored all 32 points for the football team. So it shows that you were very athletic, and you also were actually the first person to be inducted into the school's Hall of Fame. Do you think your ability of being this natural athlete really helped you in baseball?
Oh, definitely, but it was one of those things where uh, I was in the varsity in football, and I led the league all 3 years in scoring. And then wrestling, I went to states in wrestling, but I was injured when I went. And I did win the first match and lost in the final. So it was one of those things where all around athletes, I think, is makes it better. But it was one of those things that baseball was something that I wanted to do since I was knee high to a grasshopper. And I ran into my old football coach here recently, and he told me that Joe Paterno called him and wanted me to come to Penn State to play football. And my coach told him, he said, forget it. He's not interested. He said the only thing he wants to do is play baseball, and he was 100% right.
So baseball was your love over football and wrestling.
Oh, absolutely. I did the other sports just to have something to do.
That's pretty cool. But I just found it was interesting that your high school didn't have baseball and you were
No,
drafted and by the Pirates. It's like, without even a high school baseball team, that was pretty unique.
well, I played a lot of baseball, just not at the high school level.
Exactly. And being from Pennsylvania, I know you've got the Phillies up there and Pirates. You were drafted, of course, by the Pirates, but were the Pirates your MLB team, your favorite team when growing up?
After I signed, they were. I was a Dodger fan growing up with because my brother was. So he always kept on talking Dodgers, Dodgers, Dodgers. So then I became a Dodger fan. Uh, the only fan that I wasn't of the Dodgers is I was a Roger Maris fan. I didn't like the Yankees, but I loved Roger Maris because he threw right-handed and batted left.
and
That's
you
what I did.
yep, I was going to say you batted right-handed and threw left. I've got three uncles. When we grew up, they batted left and threw right-handed.
Oh,
So
really?
it, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which we done a lot of softball and stuff, but
Right.
yeah, I always thought that was unique.
Uh-huh.
You mostly played third base and travel ball. and then you moved into the outfield when you went to the minor leagues, and then, of course, you ended up as a catcher. How and why did you end up as a catcher, and was the transition to a catcher difficult?
Well, when I first signed with Pittsburgh, I went to spring training out of high school. And then when I walked in, there was a gentleman behind the desk, and he looked at me and he said, "What position do you play?" And I said, "Third base." So he got out a book and started looking at the infielders. He just said, "You're not in here." And I said, "Well, I know I'm supposed to be here. I got my ticket with me." And he said, got out another book and he said, "Oh, here you are. You're an outfielder." I said, "I never played the outfield a day in my life." He said, "You do now." So I spent the first 5 years of my career trying to learn how to play the outfield. When I first started, I was running in on home runs, running back on little duck loops over the first base. And so it was one of those things where you really had to work at it. And my second year, I got with a manager named Tom Saffel. And actually, Dave Parker and I both, we signed in 1970. And we got with Tom Saffel, and he taught us how to play the outfield. And I says, "Well, how do you play it?" And he said, "You got to play the game within the game." And the game within the game means always look at what all your runners on base. Who's the fastest, who's slower. Hard hit ball to your right, hard hit ball to your left, hard hit ball at you. Soft hit ball to your right, soft hit ball to your left, and soft ball hit to your left. Right at you. He says, "Where do you throw the ball?" And always back up bases. Whether the ball's hit the left field and I'm playing right field, I got to go in and back up second base. If I'm playing left field and the ball's hit the right field, I got to back up third base. So he's the one that taught us how to play the outfield. So I spent 5 years in the outfield learning how to play it, and 2 of them at AAA. And actually, in 2 years in AAA, I came to the big leagues during the season when there was injuries for that coffee break, 7 to 10 days. And then after my second year of AAA, at the end of the season, towards the end of the season, Harding Peterson, which was the minor league director, came to me in Charleston, West Virginia, and said, "Ed, we think we want to try you at catching." I said, "Try catching?" I said, "I never caught a day in my life." I said, "I just spent 5 years learning how to play the outfield." And he says, "Well, go home and think about it." So I went back to Allentown, and my wife and I was sitting there watching TV and a football game. And I said to her, I said, "Joni," I said, "I think I just thought of 3 reasons why I should try catching." And she goes, "What's that?" And I said, "Dave Parker, Al Oliver, and Richie Zisk. They were the 3 outfielders in the Pittsburgh Major League." So I called Pete and said, "Pete, I'll decide it. I'll try catching." So I go to spring training, put on the catching gear, and it took me about 2 weeks to realize I was supposed to keep my eyes open when the batter swung. So it was one of those things. It didn't come real easy at first. And then towards the end of spring training, Harding Peterson comes to me and says, "We're going to send you to AA." And I said, "Oh, no, I'm not going to AA." And he said, "Well, why not?" I said, "Well, Pete," I said, "first of all, I've never caught before. And if I'm going to learn how to catch, I said, at A ball, you're not a catcher. You're a goalie, because those young pitchers have no idea where they're throwing the ball." I said, "Second of all, when you get to AA, I said, now you got pitchers that have an idea, but they still don't have control. So you're a part-time catcher, part-time goalie." I said, "At the AAA level," I said, "the players there are ready to go to the major leagues, or you got major league players that have come down. Now, wouldn't you think it'd be easier for me to learn how to catch at the AAA level?" He said, "Well, let me think about it." So a couple days later, he called me in the office and he said, "Okay." He said, "We'll try you at AAA, but if you can't do the job, we're going to send you back to AA." I said, "That's all I asked." Well, that year, it ended up that Gary Carter and I were the all-star catchers in AAA. So it was one of those things that I worked hard at. I learned it fast, and the following year I came to the big leagues.
And that with a lot of your athletic ability, I mean that really helped. And then that's really saying a lot,
Yeah.
to be
Well,
there
like my
in the
dad
same.
always said, My dad always said, he said, keep your ears open and your mouth shut and you'll learn something. And I did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to be there with Gary Carter, you know, in that same level,
Right.
and that, and not playing it your whole life, that's pretty good.
Yeah. That was my first year. It was an enjoyable year.
Yeah. So that was pretty good. And then, after you kind of learned that position, I know you went up to the majors a little bit before that and came back, but what was it like when you first got the call that you were going to the major leagues?
Oh, I was actually in Tidewater, Virginia as an outfielder, and in the minor leagues, you don't dress real good, for those bus trips and everything. So I had very, very little clothes with me. And I get the call and manager tells me I'm going up to the big leagues. And I says, where am I going? He goes, they open in San Diego tonight. So I get on the plane, fly to San Diego. I get off the plane. I have no idea. I've never been to California before. And here I am in San Diego. I said, now what do I do? So I grab a cab and I said, take me to the ballpark. And this is like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So I get to the ballpark. There's nobody there. I go in, I lay down on the trainer's table, and all of a sudden the players start showing up. And they goes, you can't dress like that. I said, I don't have a choice. This is what I had with me on the road trip. So the next day, all the money they gave me for travel and stuff, I ended up going to a clothes store and buying clothes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was enjoyable. It was exciting.
Oh, yeah, that would be. And, in that situation, I mean, at the last minute, I can understand not having anything with you and going up that way. So,
Yeah.
um, you called for several pitchers. Was there a favorite pitcher that you like to catch for?
Oh, it would have to be Burt Blyleven.
Mm,
You know, he had one of the best curveballs in the game of baseball, and probably still one of the best. But it was one of those things that the only time that he was going to throw the ball in the dirt is when the hitter had two strikes on him. So he was very easy to catch. I know he had to be extremely difficult to hit, but he was easy to catch.
Somebody just commented here, Charles Hampton. He said, "Good show." So we've got people watching us. So
Oh,
we've got to
okay.
be we've got to be on our best behavior. Uh, so you had, of course, favorite pitcher to catch. Did you have a least favorite pitcher that you like to hit against?
Least favorite pitcher?
Yeah, that you
Probably
just didn't want to hit
Rogers.
against.
Probably Rogers.
Okay.
Because he threw everything slow. And I wasn't, a fastball, I could hit 110-mile-an-hour fastball, but I couldn't hit anything under 70 miles an hour. I always said I hit like 025 off speed pitches, but I hit 400 off fastballs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really wouldn't, think that way. I mean, somebody that's never played the game or something, you would think it would be somebody like Nolan Ryan that threw hard, or somebody like that would be harder to hit against.
No, I enjoyed hitting off the guys who threw hard. That was no
Mm,
problem. Velocity didn't bother me one iota, unless it was
yeah.
below 70 miles an hour.
Yep. So did you ever face Nolan Ryan?
Yes, faced Nolan Ryan quite a few times.
Wow.
You always knew what he was going to do. And you still couldn't hit it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I read up where he intimidated a lot of people, especially when he first got in the league because he threw 100 miles an hour and he didn't really have the greatest control starting out. So it's like you were scared to get in there because you didn't know where the ball was coming from.
Yeah, you kind of backed up a little bit. You gave him all the
Yeah.
speed that he needed.
Yeah, exactly. You had a solid career as a platoon catcher, which you done a lot of platooning with the Pirates, and even the Player of the Week in September of 1978. You made the Player of the Week in '79. You were again platooning and had your best batting average and second in fielding percentage behind the plate behind Gene Tennis. Was it hard being a platoon player and getting into a rhythm?
No, not really, because there was a lot more right hand pitching back then than there was left hander. So I got to play pretty consistent, not on an everyday basis, but pretty consistent. So, and then you had your batting practice, and your coaches and everything. So as long as you work at it, platooning is not that bad of a thing to do. Now, being the 25th guy on the bench where you're going to get, 30, 40 at bats a year, now your timing is going to be messed up. But platooning, I was fortunate enough to platoon with Duffy Dyer, and Steve Nicosia. So it was one of those that we really worked well together.
And it's kind of funny that you mentioned Duffy Dyer, which I read a little bit about that. But there's a guy here I went to school with, and his name's Duffy Dyer, and he was actually named after that Duffy Dyer because
Oh
his parents
boy.
was big baseball fans, and I know a Duffy Dyer here.
Yeah, I probably owe Duffy Dyer my whole career.
Mhm.
Because it was one of those things when I first came to the big leagues as a catcher with Danny Murtaugh was the manager, and Danny never really liked to give the rookie an opportunity. So I was in the big leagues the whole year, and I only had like 38 at bats all year. So constantly because Sanguian was there. So Duffy didn't play a lot either. So while we were in the bullpen, Duffy would go over every hitter during the course of the game with me, what they can hit, what they look for in situations. So even though I didn't have the experience of playing, I had the exposure of Duffy Dyer and then teaching me what the hitters look for in certain situations. So even though I didn't play a lot, I still learned the major league players, through
That's
Duffy Dyer. So I owe him my whole career.
that's pretty neat because I read where there was Sanguian there was Duffy Dyer, and there was you. I mean, there was three catchers, so it would be pretty hard to get a lot of playing time, especially with three catchers in that position there.
Yeah, I had 38 at bats all year.
Wow, wow. We spoke about your school being football and wrestling school and basketball, and uh, I read where it came in a little handy playing baseball that you were a wrestler, especially when it came with Felix Milan and Mike Smith. So I guess there was a little bit, uh, trouble there. I was reading where Felix, and I don't know which story's true. They said that he threw the baseball and hit you in the hand, and then the other story says he hit you in the jaw with the baseball in his hand. So I don't know which
That
happened.
that's the true story. I
Okay.
broke up a double play, and all I did was really, I just touched his foot. I didn't slide hard into him or anything, but when I always slid, I always had a tendency to wipe off, my legs when I got up. And when I wiped off, I saw an object out of his hand, and he had the baseball in his hand and hit me in the right side of the jaw. And being a wrestler, I wasn't a boxer, so being a wrestler, everything took place within seconds. It was just a reaction. I just picked him up and slammed him to the ground. And unfortunately, he got injured during that. And everybody knows the injury that, he dislocated his shoulder and everything else. What people don't understand is I dislocated my shoulder at the same time. But the
Yeah.
problem about that is I came back and played 5 days later, and he did not.
Yeah, I read
That was
about
the real
that.
story.
Yeah, I read about that. And then Mike Smith, I guess he was kind of like going back and forth with the pitcher, and the pitcher threw one a little bit too close, and Mike didn't like it, and kind of was saying, next time you do that, I'm gonna come and get you or whatever. And the pitcher said, "Why wait till next time?" or something like that.
Exactly. It was Bruce Keaton was the pitcher, and he hit Mike Schmidt. And not knowing, I'll get onto that later, but Schmidt made that kind of like a circle out in front of the plate, and I'm on home plate, and I'm going, Schmidt, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do this. So he pointed at him, and that's when he said, the next time I'm coming out there. And then Bruce Keaton, being the competitor that he is, he said, why wait till the next time? Well, Schmitty V-lines it for pitcher's mound, and I take off right behind him, and they exchange punches by the time I got there, and I just tackled Mike Schmidt from behind, and I held him on the ground, and being a wrestler, I know what a tight waist is. So I just
Yeah.
kept putting pressure on his waist, and I was right in his ear, and I said, and Schmitty would say, let me up. I said, Schmitty, if I let you up, it's all over, right? He goes, let me up. I said, Schmitty, it's all over, right? If I let you up. And he goes, yes. So then I left him up. But then I get blamed because he ended up breaking a finger during that altercation, whether it was when I tackled him and he hit the ground or whether he did it when he punched Keeson. We don't know, but I got blamed for it. So I get the blame for everything, Dave.
Yeah, I guess they've got to blame everybody, somebody for everything. But you're the wrestler, so it's like I guess you got broad shoulders. They can blame you, and you can handle it.
Yeah, and the weird part about that is we played Philadelphia a couple weeks later, and Mike was taking some extra BP, after they took the thing off his finger. And I know the hitting coach, and I was standing by the batting cage, and the hitting coach told Smitty to do something. He said, I could have. I wanted to broke my finger. And he just turned around, and we both just stood there laughing at each other. I said, Smitty, I said, I wish I knew I would have done it, but he knew, that's part of the game. It was part of the game back then.
It was.
And being the rivals with them. Yeah, I think I'm the only person in the history of Philadelphia to get a standing O boo.
Well, you could be
one time, and like 30-some thousand people stood up and booed me.
Well, that sounds like Johnny LeMaster. He said it got so bad that he entered the game with "boo" on the back of his jersey, and then the manager thought it said Bob, and he said, what's Bob doing on the back of his shirt? And actually, I guess the guy that done it, the clubhouse manager or whatever, got in trouble for doing that for Johnny when Johnny asked him. But yeah, it's a big thing. You see the pictures, and he's got "boo" on the back of his jersey instead of LeMaster because he's booed so much.
Yeah, Johnny was a card.
Oh yeah, I like Johnny. He's a pretty good guy.
Good guy.
Yep, and also, even when you was manager, you was still instilling some of your wrestling moves. I read where, there's a big fight, and you even had to get a hold of Rob Dibble once, which, being a Cincinnati Reds fan, it's like, he got a hold of Rob Dibble.
Well, the situation is Dibble threw at our shortstop, Eric Yelding, and Eric Yelding weighs about 155 pounds soaking wet, and he threw right behind his head. Well, I give Eric Yelding a congratulations because he charged him out. Now, Rob Dibble's a pretty good-sized boy.
Yeah.
So I beeline it. I was coaching first base, and I beeline it for pitcher's mound to save Eric Yelding's life. And I grabbed Rob Dibble. Whenever I grabbed somebody, I always grabbed their jersey and then twisted so they couldn't get away. Well, somebody ended up blindsiding me from the other side, and I ended up breaking my fingertip. And then, but no punches were thrown or anything. So then after it was all over, I'm back at first base. And you being a Cincinnati fan, you know how close first base coach's box is to their dugout.
Yes.
I hear this voice saying, the next time I'm going to kill you. And I'm just looking straight ahead, and I hear it again. And I turned around, and it's Rob Dibble inside the dugout, and he's pointing at me. I said, are you talking to me? He said, yeah, next time I'm going to kill you. So I walked over to the dugout, and I pointed right at him and looked him dead in the eye, and I said, next time, we'll see who kills who. And I told him, I said, you threaten somebody's life, you better be willing to take it. Well, a couple of weeks later, we get another altercation with Cincinnati, and I'm in the dugout, come rushing out of the dugout. I'm going, where's Dibble? And I found him, and I headed for him. Yeah. So he never threw at another one of our players. I know that.
Well, it sounds like you kind of straightened him out a little bit.
Well, I don't know if I straightened him out, but he was a great pitcher. There's no reason to throw at anybody's head.
No.
Those
Charles Hampton
were like 50-mile-an-hour fastballs, not 100. You hit somebody in the head with a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, you might kill them.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
There's no place in the game. I mean, I can see throwing for somebody's ribs or something like that, but never at anybody's head.
No, that's never a good thing.
No.
Charles Hampton asked, wanted me to ask you, who was your favorite Reds?
Who was my favorite? What?
Red, Cincinnati Red.
It had to be George Foster.
Mm.
Because when I first came to the big leagues as an outfielder, and I came up and where the day of Pittsburgh was playing the Reds, and he's the only player in my whole career that walked over to me and he said, "Welcome to the major leagues." He knew I was just called up from the minor leagues. So that made
That,
George Foster my favorite Reds player.
well, that was pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like winning the World Series? You won it in '79.
Yes.
What was that like winning the World Series?
Outstanding. It's one of those things. It's like a birthday. It's nice to have the cake, and then if they put the icing on it, that's even better. But you can still enjoy the cake, So getting to the World Series was the cake. We were just glad to be there, and we got down 3-1, and we ended up fighting our way back and winning it. So we ended up with the icing. So no matter whether we would have won it or didn't win it, we could still eat the cake. But it was kind of fabulous, fantastic with the players that we were with, because we were called the family, and that's exactly what we were.
Yeah, we are family.
Probably the most well-knit 25 guys I've ever seen in baseball.
Yeah, I know that you guys, didn't you beat the Reds and then went to play Baltimore and beat them in the World Series?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So, thinking about the Reds, you all played the Reds a lot when it came to divisional titles.
We played a lot.
Yeah. So, divisional titles seem like you all always ended up playing each other to get to the World Series or something there. But were the Reds your biggest rival, or would it have been Philadelphia Phillies?
Well, Philadelphia, because they were in our division. Back then you had 2 divisions, in the National League and 2 divisions in the American League. So Philadelphia would have been our biggest rivalry because we were in their division. But the Reds, if you won your division, you can guarantee you're going to play the Reds in the next series.
Exactly.
It's a big Red.
And then
they were an awesome ball club.
Yeah, they were. We'll probably never see another one like that in Cincinnati.
No.
No.
Or Pittsburgh.
No. Yeah, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Yeah, we won't even go there now.
No, not anymore.
No, but I'm good friends with Al Oliver. What was it like having Al for a teammate?
Al was a great teammate. He was one of those guys that he was very quiet. He didn't speak a whole lot, but he let his actions take place on the field. And he was an outstanding teammate and an outstanding player. He hit more ferocious line drives than I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it just seems like watching him play back in the day, he was a pure hitter, and when he hit the ball, I mean, it had something behind it.
Oh yeah, it had some smoke coming off.
Oh yeah, and what do you think now? I mean, that back in the '70s and early '80s when you played, baseball's changed a lot. What do you think about some of the changes, like time limit for the pitchers, batters only allowed to step out once, or it's an automatic strike if they step out again, and then no shift. You can't shift anymore, use the shift, and then no fake throws to third. Where do you think baseball's going, and how do you feel about some of that stuff?
Well, the worst one is you can't block home plate no more.
Yeah.
I quit catching if I couldn't block home plate. I took pride in that. So it's one of these things that they're trying to speed the game up. But when people come to the ballpark, they know they're going to be there for 3 hours. It's the only sport that doesn't have a clock. Don't put a clock on it. Let the players play. And now that they juiced up the baseball and they brought in all the fences and the new ballparks, people, a true fan wants to see a 3-2, 4-3, 2-1 game. The below average fan, they want to see 16-13. Well, as a manager or a coach or a player, what do? You can't manage a 16-13 game. You can manage a 3-2, 4-3, whatever. But some of the changes, I understand why they're doing it, because the amount of money that these players are making, That's kind of ridiculous, but we were the ones that set the precedence for it, but we don't get no credit for it. But
No,
no,
I
I
saw
don't think
just
it changes at all. I'd like to go back to the 60s and 70s and 80s.
yeah. I'm with you. And what gets me is the ghost runner on second after in extra innings.
Oh yeah, come on.
Yeah,
I caught in
feels
two
like
games and caught 22 innings in both of them.
yeah,
Extra inning games. Let us play. Let,
exactly. And
let us decide who's going to win and how we're going to win it.
yeah, and I remember reading about Nolan Ryan throwing 200 some pitches in one game. So
Oh yeah, unbelievable.
yep, I
He only
know it.
threw what 14 innings or something like
Yeah,
that in that game.
yeah,
14, 15 innings.
yeah. It's
You'll
crazy.
never see that anymore.
No, and you throwing 100 miles an hour for that long, and it. He may have been a freak of nature, but I mean, he pitched all them years throwing that hard and 200 pitches a game or 150 or 100, whatever, and he survived it. So
Yeah, and we didn't have the weight rooms they have nowadays, and that's the
yeah,
big thing. All these weight rooms and everything, they always talk about lifting weights, lifting weights. Well, the thing is we tore our hamstring back in the 70s. We were playing 5, 6 days later. They tear a hamstring now, they're out for 3 or 4 weeks,
yeah,
because their muscles are so strong now, and
yeah.
the weight
Ex-
program has kind of hurt the game also.
And what would you consider your most memorable moment playing baseball? Would that have been the '79 World Series?
Well, that would have ranked in there, but personally, my own personal one would have been the game we were playing Philadelphia on a Saturday afternoon TV game in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia we were down 8-0 after 3 innings, and we all come back to the dugout. We're kind of sitting there with our heads down. And I remember Stargell coming up and sitting on the dugout steps there in Philadelphia. And he said, and it was me and Phil Garner and Bill Madlock and them, and we're sitting there, and he goes, he said, this game's on televised TV. He said, there's millions of people out there watching. He said, let's go out and show them what the Pirates are really made out of. And we all kind of turned our heads and looked at each other and said, let's do it. Well, it was 8-3, 8-4, 8-5. And then they walked Madlock ahead of me and had Tug McGraw in the game. And I'm looking over at the bench thinking, okay, lefty on lefty, I don't face lefty. So Tanner looks at me and he's clapping his hands, go get him. And I ended up hitting a grand slam off Tug McGraw. We ended up taking the lead. And then we ended up winning the game like 13-11 or something like that. But the personal, that would have been the moment. But winning the World Series was ungodly.
That was your first Grand Slam, wasn't it?
Only.
Only.
Only grand slam.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty
I hit
cool.
many home runs.
Yeah, yeah, that was pretty cool. And then after baseball, and I always found this story kind of interesting when I read it. After baseball, you coached some in the minor league for the Pirates and Astros. You expected your players to give it all, they had, which that's the way it should be. Uh, you actually pulled someone out of the game in center field for not hustling. Could you tell us about that story? Because I thought this was interesting.
Well, that player just happened to be Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds came to me. He was the Pirates' #1 draft choice overall. Came to me in Woodbridge, Virginia. And when he came to me, I told him, I said, Barry, I said, I have very few rules. Don't be late and always hustle. The way I kind of explain it to the young players of today, look, it takes an average player like 4.7 seconds to run from home to first base. You hit 4 ground balls during the course of a game to the infield. All I'm asking you to do is run hard all 4 times. So even now you're talking about like 18 seconds out of a 24-hour day. And I said, you think I'm asking for too much? And then they all look at you and said, oh, now I see what you're talking about. Well, it happened, Barry was playing center field for me. And the hitter hit a line drive to center field. Barry tried to come in and make a shoestring catch, which is fine, But unfortunately, he missed it. But he turned around and jogged after the baseball. And when he jogged out to the baseball, the veins in my neck were sticking out. So I called time, walked out to the pitcher's mound, and I'm just staring into center field, right? And I'm at the whole infield, the pitcher's looking at me like, what are you going to do? And I'm just staring. And here comes the home plate umpire. He goes, Ed, what are you going to do? And I looked at him and I said, I'm going to make a move. And he looks out to my bullpen. There's nobody throwing. He said, you don't have anybody throwing in your bullpen. I said, I told you I'm going to make a move. I didn't say I was taking my pitcher out. So I motioned out to Bonds. I motioned him off the field. I motioned my extra outfielder to go play center field. Bonds ran off the field and got to the dugout. And by the time I got there, he looked me dead in the face from like 2 feet away, and he said, it'll never happen again. And I looked at him and I said, I know it. So therefore, after that, when he became in the big leagues with Pittsburgh and all that, and we played, I was with Houston, they'd come out, he'd come out and he goes, you know, I never forgot you taking me out of the game. I said, I never forgot you not hustling. And we sit there and laugh at each other.
Yep, you sent a message.
I really like Barry. He was a no player.
Yeah, and you sent a message that day.
Yeah, he understood. Because like I said, I was number 23 draft choice. Dave Parker was number 21 in 1970. We're the only two out of that draft choice that made it to the big leagues. So do you know how many 1 through 10s I've seen go by the wayside? A lot. So I treat every player as if you were a number 1 draft choice.
Yeah.
Everybody's treated equal.
That's a good mentality. You know, I've interviewed quite a few players, and of course they've told me some funny clubhouse stories, you know, nothing that's bad or anything, but stories about, I know Scott Harrison, he was talking about when he first got to San Diego, he went down to breakfast and all the donuts had a bite all out of them except for one. And he found out that when he was eating that, Trevor Hoffman told him, yeah, that was the one he licked. But, you know, different. Is there any funny clubhouse stories when you played for the Pirates or Angels that you can share with us that's rated G?
Not a whole lot of them because we took the game pretty serious. But I will say, Sanguian, Manny used to climb up on top of the dugout and look like a gorilla. He would make the gorilla sounds and stuff, and it was just ungodly. And then one day, Enrique Romo came to the ballpark, one of our pitchers in 1979, and I guess he had a argument with his wife. So he drank some before he came to the game. Well, he used to always keep a long saber sword, you know, like Pancho Villa. He always used to say, Pancho Villa, because he was from Mexico. And he got the sword out and started swinging it around, and guys were just running for their life because he was just swinging the sword. And I ended up going over to him and I said, Enrique, give me that sword. Because if you don't, I'm going to take it away from you and I'm going to shove it where you don't want it. But we never had, you know, Dave Parker used to play his music, you know, he used to play all that really loud music. And then Phil Garner would go over to the stereo and take the tape out and put in a country western tape. Then those two would get in a big argument. So,
oh my God.
I mean, we didn't do anything really crazy, but we had some good times in that dugout on the clubhouse.
I think that left after Doc Ellis did, you know, when he was supposedly throwed a no-hitter on LSD and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, boy. I wasn't there for that one.
No, Al Oliver said, he said, which we do the Diamond Dinner down here in Maysville every year for the foundation, and we bring in former Major League Baseball players, and Al's been there every year, and that question came up this year, and Al said, let me tell you, there's no way somebody's going to throw a no-hitter on LSD.
He did it.
I know.
From my understanding, I wasn't there.
I know it. So, you know, you've been retired for a while now. What do you do on your free time and stuff now? I mean, you know, I know you like to fish and stuff.
Well, I like to fish and I like to hunt, but my health hasn't been that good in the last 3 or 4 years. I just had my 4th knee replacement, You know, I've had 16 knee operations total. I had triple bypass. I had a brain surgery. You know, so it's one of those things that I don't do a whole lot no more. So I kind of do the house. My life revolves around four wheels. I walk outside. I get on my four wheeler. I drive down to my tractor. You know, and I mow the fields. And after that, I get on my four wheel lawnmower and mow the yard. But you know, I don't go to the barn much. My wife is definitely into horses. You know, she's a great rider and trainer. So I leave the barn to her now, and I just do the outside work as long as there's four wheels under it.
Well, we've down in Kentucky, of course. I know you mentioned about hunting. We do a lot of deer hunting down here, and my brothers they have a cabin and they lease quite a few thousand acres down here. So if you ever want to come down and deer hunt, let me know.
Oh boy, that would be that, as long as I can bring my four wheeler.
Oh, you can, and we'll even set you up at the cabin, and they usually play a little bit of music there. It won't be rap or any of that stuff, but you'll hear a little bit of music there.
You got my vote.
There you go. Um, I'm going to do some rapid fire questions here. I always do that in the interview, but before I do that, Steve Dragon, he said, loved Ed Ott, hard nosed catcher, tough.
Yeah, thank you. I
Yep,
greatly
Steve
appreciate it.
Dragon. Yep. So the rapid fire questions. What was your favorite park to play in?
Probably Three River Stadium, but I love
Yep.
Dodger Stadium also.
Your favorite teammate?
Favorite teammate had to be Phil Garner.
Hmm, that would have been a good one. What was your first car?
My first what?
Car.
My first car was a 1969 Montero.
Hmm.
Matter of fact, my niece actually ended up buying it, and
And
she has it stored in her garage.
still has it.
Yeah, she has
That's
it. I don't have it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though. Still in the family.
Yep,
And the last one, of course, I'm from Kentucky, and we listen to bluegrass music here. Have you ever heard of bluegrass music?
absolutely. I love it. Country and bluegrass. I got a lot of bluegrass tapes.
There
They
you go.
make
Because
tracks, but I got them.
I was going to say that's one thing. If you come down here, you got to listen to bluegrass music because that's
Oh, I
about all
love
we listen
bluegrass.
to.
Yeah, I lived
Uh,
in Virginia for quite a while, so we went down to like West Virginia and all that. We do a lot of bluegrass. Love it.
oh yeah, that's something that's pretty popular in Virginia too. So,
Uh huh. Definitely.
but Ed, really appreciate you doing this interview, and I know people's going to be watching this afterwards because it'll be on Facebook. And if you want to go back and listen to this interview, you can just find it on there and click, and it'll be on there forever. So we're captured.
I'm from the old school. I don't know how to click.
But I really appreciate you coming on here and doing this because
Oh,
I like
today.
doing these interviews and
Thank
I
you
like
for
getting
having
these.
me.
Okay, and I like getting these stories, and it's just neat, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.